Every root beer you drank as a kid was a lie. Not the soda itself, the flavor. Because real root beer, the kind your great-grandparents drank, does not exist anymore. It was erased, banned, removed from every recipe in America in less than 24 hours by a single FDA ruling in 1960. The reason? One ingredient, one tree, one chemical compound found in the roots. Sassafras albidum. The tree that gave root beer its name, the tree that flavored an entire nation's childhood for over 200 years. The tree that Native Americans used as medicine for thousands of years before Europeans ever arrived. And the FDA declared it too dangerous to consume, ordered it removed from every commercial product, threatened manufacturers with prosecution, and replaced it with artificial flavoring that tastes similar but is not even close to the real thing. But here is what they did not tell you. The science behind that ban was flawed. The dosage used in the study would require you to drink 15,000 root beers per day to match it. And the chemical they banned, safrole, is still legal in dozens of other foods you eat right now, including cinnamon nutmeg and black pepper. This is the story of how the government killed a 200-year-old industry overnight. How a tree that fed and healed people for millennia became classified as dangerous, and why you can still find sassafras growing wild in almost every forest in the eastern United States, while the FDA pretends it does not exist. Let me show you what they took from you, and why the ban never made sense. Sassafras albidum, a medium-sized deciduous tree native to eastern North America. Grows from southern Maine to Florida, from the Atlantic coast to eastern Texas, one of the most common trees in American forests. You have probably walked past it 100 times without knowing. Leaves are distinctive, 3 different shapes on the same tree. Some oval, some mitten-shaped with one thumb, some 3-lobed like a trident. The bark smells spicy when scratched. The roots smell even stronger, sweet, aromatic, unmistakable. Native American tribes across the eastern woodlands used sassafras for thousands of years. The Cherokee made tea from the roots to purify blood in spring. The Choctaw used it to treat fevers. The Iroquois boiled the bark for respiratory ailments. It was considered a powerful spring tonic to cleanse the body after winter. When European colonists arrived in the 1600s, they were introduced to sassafras by indigenous peoples, and they went absolutely insane for it. Sassafras became one of the first major exports from the American colonies back to Europe. Ships loaded with sassafras, roots, and bark sailed to England and France, where it sold for premium prices. It was marketed as a cure-all medicine, a wonder drug from the New World. By the 1700s, sassafras was being harvested commercially across the colonies. It was used to flavor foods, brewed as tea, distilled into essential oils, and most importantly, it became the primary flavoring for a new type of beverage being developed in America, root beer. The original root beer was not soda. It was a medicinal tonic. Brewed from sassafras roots, combined with other roots and herbs like sarsaparilla, wintergreen licorice, and birch bark. These tonics were sold by apothecaries and folk healers as health drinks. In the 1840s, pharmacists began carbonating these root-based tonics, creating the first commercial root beers. By the 1860s, brands like Heyer's Root Beer were being mass-produced and sold across America. Sassafras was the signature flavor, the ingredient that made root beer taste like root beer. By 1900, root beer was one of the most popular soft drinks in America, rivaling Coca-Cola, sold in drugstores, soda fountains, and general stores. Every brand used real sassafras root extract. It was the backbone of the industry. And then in 1960, everything changed. In 1960, the FDA published findings from an animal study conducted on safrole. Safrole is the primary aromatic compound in sassafras root oil. It is what gives sassafras its distinctive smell and flavor. The study involved feeding massive doses of pure safrole to laboratory rats. The doses were extraordinarily high, far beyond anything a human would ever consume through food or drink. The results showed that at these extreme doses, safrole caused liver tumors in the rats. Based on this single study, the FDA declared safrole a potential carcinogen. And on December 3, 1960, the FDA banned the use of sassafras root bark and oil in commercial food and beverages. The ruling was immediate. No grace period, no phase-out. Manufacturers had to reformulate immediately or face legal action. Every root beer company in America scrambled to remove sassafras from their recipes. They replaced it with artificial sassafras flavor, a synthetic compound designed to mimic the taste without containing actual safrole. That artificial flavor is what you taste in every commercial root beer today. A 200-year-old tradition ended overnight, an entire tree removed from American food culture by a single regulatory decision. But here is what the FDA did not tell the public. The dosage used in that rat study was absurd. To match the amount of safrole the rats were given, a human being would need to consume approximately 1 to 3 milligrams of safrole per kilogram of body weight per day. For a 70-kilogram adult, that is roughly 70 to 210 milligrams of pure safrole daily. Traditional root beer made with sassafras root extract contained approximately 0.1 to 0.2 milligrams of safrole per 12-ounce serving, maybe slightly more in stronger brews. Do the math. To reach the dosage that caused tumors in rats, you would need to drink somewhere between 350 to 2,100 servings of traditional root beer per day. Every single day. For months. Nobody drinks 2,000 root beers per day. It is a physically impossible dosage for normal human consumption. And yet, the FDA used this study to justify a complete ban on sassafras in food. Here is where it gets even more ridiculous. Safrole is not unique to sassafras. It appears naturally in dozens of other foods and spices, and many of those foods are still completely legal to sell and consume in the United States. Black pepper contains safrole, nutmeg contains safrole, mace contains safrole, cinnamon contains safrole, basil contains safrole, star anise contains safrole, cocoa contains safrole. All of these are sold freely in grocery stores across America. No warnings, no restrictions, no bans. The difference? Sassafras was a concentrated source when used as an extract in root beer. But even then, the actual safrole content was low compared to the doses used in the rat study. If the FDA were truly concerned about safrole exposure, they would have banned or regulated all safrole-containing foods. But they did not. They specifically targeted sassafras. Why? Some researchers suggest it was because sassafras was used commercially in a specific product category, soft drinks, that was heavily regulated and easy to control. Banning sassafras in root beer was enforceable. Banning safrole in all spices would have been a regulatory nightmare. Others suggest the synthetic flavor industry lobbied for the ban. Artificial sassafras flavor could be patented, controlled, sold at consistent prices. Real sassafras root was wild harvested, unpredictable, uncontrollable. Switching the industry to synthetic flavoring created a captive market for chemical companies. There is no smoking gun document proving this, but the economic incentives are clear, and the science behind the ban has been questioned for decades. A 1977 review published in the journal Food and Cosmetics Toxicology re-examined the safrole studies and concluded that the cancer risk to humans from normal dietary exposure to safrole-containing foods and spices is negligible. The author noted that humans have consumed these foods for thousands of years without observable epidemic increases in liver cancer. A 1994 study in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry found that while safrole is metabolized into compounds that can bind to DNA in rats, the doses required are far above anything encountered in typical food consumption. But the FDA ban remains in place, 64 years later. Sassafras root bark and oil are still illegal to sell as food ingredients in the United States. While the FDA was declaring sassafras too dangerous for Americans to drink, they conveniently ignored thousands of years of safe traditional use. The Cherokee called it pav. They harvested the roots in early spring and made tea to purify blood and treat rheumatism. They used it as a wash for skin irritations and eye infections. They considered it one of their most important medicinal plants. The Choctaw used sassafras root tea to reduce fever and treat colds. They also used it as a blood thinner. Modern research has actually confirmed that safrole does have mild anticoagulant properties supporting this traditional use. The Iroquois boiled the inner bark to make cough medicine. They also used sassafras twigs to clean teeth. The antibacterial properties of safrole made it effective for oral hygiene. The Seminole used sassafras as a general tonic and to treat measles. The Creek used it for stomach issues and to promote sweating during illness. Archaeological evidence suggests Native Americans used sassafras for at least 3,000 years, possibly longer, across dozens of tribes, spanning thousands of miles of territory. No tribal oral histories, no historical records. No early colonial accounts ever mentioned mass liver cancer or liver disease epidemics among Native Americans using sassafras. Early European settlers adopted sassafras use enthusiastically. Colonial households brewed sassafras tea daily. It was consumed by millions of people across generations for over 300 years. Again, no epidemic of liver cancer, no documented health crisis, no pattern of disease that would suggest sassafras was causing widespread harm. The FDA based their ban on high-dose animal studies, but real-world human consumption data spanning centuries showed no such problems. This is the pattern we see repeatedly with natural substances. Extreme doses in lab animals, immediate bans, replacement with synthetic alternatives, and centuries of safe human use ignored. Here is the beautiful irony. The FDA banned sassafras from your root beer. but they could not ban the tree itself. Sassafras albidum still grows wild across the eastern United States, millions of trees, in forests, along roadsides, in abandoned lots, on the edges of fields, anywhere the soil is decent and there is sunlight. It is classified as a pioneer species, one of the first trees to colonize disturbed land. It spreads aggressively through root suckers forming dense thickets. It is nearly impossible to eliminate once established. You can legally grow sassafras trees. You can legally own them. You can legally dig up the roots for personal use. What you cannot do is sell sassafras root bark or oil as a food ingredient commercially, which means people still harvest it. They just do it quietly. In rural Appalachia and the Ozarks, traditional sassafras tea is still brewed. Older generations who remember the real thing still dig roots in early spring when the sap is rising. They dry the roots, store them, use them throughout the year. You can buy dried sassafras root bark online, legally. It is sold as a soap-making ingredient or for craft purposes. Suppliers are careful to include disclaimers that it is not for internal consumption. But once you buy it, what you do with it in your own home is your business. The same tree that flavored root beer for 200 years is still out there, still growing, still producing the same aromatic roots it always has. The FDA changed the law, but they could not change biology, and the knowledge of how to use it never fully disappeared. In some southern states, sassafras is still harvested commercially for filet powder. This is a seasoning made from dried ground sassafras leaves used in Creole and Cajun cooking, especially in gumbo. Filet powder is legal because it is made from the leaves, not the roots. The leaves contain much lower levels of safrole. But it is the same tree, the same species the FDA declared too dangerous for root beer. The inconsistency is stunning. In recent decades, multiple studies have re-examined the safrole question, and the findings suggest the 1960 ban was an overreaction. A 2005 review in the journal Regulatory Toxicology and Pharmacology analyzed decades of research on safrole and related compounds. The authors concluded that the cancer risk from safrole at dietary exposure levels is extremely low and likely negligible for most people. The review noted that the original rat studies used doses hundreds to thousands of times higher than human dietary exposure. It also noted that rats metabolize safrole differently than humans, which may make them more susceptible to its effects. A 2011 study published in Food and Chemical Toxicology examined safrole metabolism in human liver cells. The researchers found that at low doses similar to dietary exposure, safrole is efficiently metabolized and eliminated without causing significant DNA damage. These studies have not resulted in the FDA reversing the ban. The regulatory decision made in 1960 remains in effect. Once something is banned, changing that decision requires political will, regulatory review, and industry pressure. None of those forces are pushing to bring back real sassafras in commercial products. The artificial flavor industry has no incentive to change. Root beer companies have no incentive to reformulate. Consumers have been drinking artificial sassafras flavor for over 60 years. Most people under the age of 70 have never tasted real sassafras root beer. The knowledge of what was lost has faded, but the tree is still there. So here we are. Every root beer you have ever drunk was flavored with a synthetic chemical designed to mimic a tree the government banned in 1960 based on a rat study using impossible dosages that no human could ever consume. That tree Sassafras albidum was used safely by Native Americans for thousands of years. It was consumed by European colonists and early Americans for 3 centuries. It flavored the most popular soft drink in the country for over 100 years. And there is no historical evidence of widespread harm. The FDA declared it dangerous, removed it from the market overnight, replaced it with artificial flavoring. And 64 years later, the ban remains, even though modern research suggests the cancer risk at normal consumption levels is negligible. Meanwhile, sassafras still grows wild across half the country, still produces the same aromatic roots, still gets harvested by people who remember, still used in traditional cooking as filet powder, still completely legal to own and grow. You just cannot put it in your root beer anymore. The government did not protect you from sassafras. They protected the synthetic flavor industry. They removed your access to a natural traditional ingredient and replaced it with a patented chemical compound that tastes similar but is not the same. And they did it so fast and so completely that most people do not even know what they lost. Root beer still exists, but real root beer, the kind made from actual roots, the kind that connected Americans to the forests and to indigenous knowledge and to 300 years of tradition, that root beer is gone. Not because the tree died, not because people stopped wanting it, but because one federal agency decided in 1960 that you could not be trusted to drink it. The tree is still there, growing in forests across the East, waiting. The knowledge of how to use it still exists in communities that never forgot. The science questioning the ban has been published for decades. But the root beer you buy at the store will never taste like the real thing again, unless something changes, unless enough people learn what was taken. Unless enough people start asking why a tree used safely for millennia is still banned, while black pepper, nutmeg, and cinnamon containing the exact same compound sit freely on grocery shelves. The tree flavored your childhood, even if you never tasted the real thing, because the memory of sassafras is baked into the idea of root beer itself. They banned the ingredient, but they could not kill the tree. And maybe that is enough. Drop sassafras in the comments if this made you want to taste the real thing. Share this with someone who loves root beer and has no idea what it used to be. Hit subscribe because the next video exposes a plant that makes concrete fireproof and lasts 600 years, but building codes made it illegal. I will see you in the next one.